Welcome to the Insurance Producers Podcast, where we bring you the top personalized producers, insurance agents, and industry partners, giving you at least 3 takeaways to 10x your production and build your multi-million-dollar revenue books. So sit back, relax, and become inspired by the success stories and strategies of the world's top insurance minds. Let's roll.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the Insurance Producers Podcast. I'm your host, Cyrus Jaffery. It's good to have you, man. I've got a special guest for you guys, in-town talent here. I've got Elliot Bassett. What's happening, buddy?
Oh man, I'm glad to be here. Thanks for having me. I'm glad we got it lined up.
I know, man.
In the new space too. Right?
Yeah, this is
awesome.
this is the first time recording at the new space, so this is exciting for us, man. So I've known Elliot for a long time, and man, respect what he's doing. Obviously, hometown man, 2 of us here, and it kind of sucks. It's taken us this long, honestly, to get on a podcast and talk about some cool things. So let's take us back, man. Just really quick, 30 seconds, minute. How you got into the insurance industry, man, and we'll get rolling.
Yeah. So we were talking a little bit before. Our firm started in 1906, but my father joined the company in the 90s. That's how I got involved. It's not a full family-owned company, but we have other partners, but then there's myself, my cousin Andy, and my younger brother. So it's become a quasi-family run company. But yeah, we were a traditional P&C firm, and then 9 or 10 years ago, we made a pretty significant shift away from just being that property casualty insurance. We do mostly commercial work to more of that consultative risk advisor approach. So that's been the last almost decade now of really building out that model and, learning, testing, growing, innovating, and doing all the things. So
that's awesome, man. So obviously right now it's probably the perfect time. Everybody wishes 9-10 years ago they probably pivoted to more the financial services and all this stuff. And I come from State Farm, so our model was, hey, P&C, bring them, it's really easy to get them in. Then you got life insurance and health and disability, and then sell them mutual funds and all these other things because they trust you, right?
Yeah,
so
100%.
How has that been going, man, the last 9-10 years? I'm curious on that.
Yeah, I mean, really well. We've over doubled the size of the company in that time. We've had a lot of growth. But that's one of the things we realized, we can continue to go out and get new clients in, or we can do that as well as doing more for current clients that we already have a trusting relationship with, and that frankly need additional help. And we call them synergies between these different areas, right? Where if traditional, you have your P&C silo, right? Then you have your benefits silo, and you have your financial services silo or whatever in different businesses. And if those advisors or whomever are not communicating, you're not doing synergistic strategies, you're not going to get the most out of the dollars you're spending on risk management, right? Mm-hmm. And so that's part of our model, is to make sure those dollars are operating most efficiently. And, we don't always handle all those different areas for our clients, but our goal is that we're doing, we call it Encore, is kind of our brand in the market. And we call it being an Encore client if we have 3 of those areas that we can offer to them. And that means, it's stickier. We're generating the right amount of revenue from them. We can do the right amount of services for them.
Yeah. So for somebody that is starting right now, it's hard market. A lot of personal lines people are looking more into life insurance or looking into more products. That's a little bit easier to sell in this hard market. What would be one of your suggestions to some of these agents that are like, man, I've thought about that for a long time. What would be 1 or 2 things you would recommend to them if they're starting today to do what you guys did 9-10 years ago? Yeah.
I mean, the first thing I always tell everybody is don't sell, solve problems, right? So the first thing you can do is, first off, get out and talk to people. What are they struggling with? What do they need in and around what you do, obviously, or what you're thinking about. But figure out where the need lies, and then go find people that have that. When you're talking to your clients, don't offer them life insurance for the sake of offering them life insurance. Mm-hmm. Understand what their underlying needs are, and then bring the right product, bring the right solution, ultimately solve for that need if you can, right? Sometimes that's not going to be you. It might have to be somebody else. But the minute you try to just sell people a product is the minute you're not going to be as successful as you otherwise could be if you're coming at it from the perspective of providing value, right? Yeah. We sell, quote unquote, a very valuable product to people. Sure. It's just oftentimes because people have to buy it, we sell it as a product, not as a solution. And I think that's the biggest thing, is shift your perspective there and really get out, find those opportunities, find those needs in your client, and the sale will come easy,
100%.
So that's what I'd encourage everybody to do, is definitely look for those other areas, because again, you have a client that's trusting you in an area. Don't understate the value of that, but also don't just shove product at them. Ask them the right questions, understand their situation deeply, build a relationship with them, and then that will come naturally.
Yeah, 100%. So let's talk a little bit about the organizational structure, if you could. How many team members, producers, agents, leadership side, if you don't mind?
Yep, we're about 55 people or so across the company. We have 4 different divisions that we operate in. So we have our P&C, which is both commercial and personal lines. Then we have a benefits division. We have a wealth strategies division. And then what we call business solutions, which there's kind of some unique stuff we do in there consultatively and things. And then 12 producers, we call them risk advisors, across those different divisions that are out either actively on the business development side or driving those different solutions with our clients.
That's awesome. So your role, your day-to-day, what does that look like?
Yeah, so I grew up in the production side. I was literally the old, like, hey, here's a phone book, go figure it out, your day one, get your test done and go. So
how long have you been doing it?
Since 2010, right out of college.
Okay.
So I think I started studying for my test like before I even graduated. So I got that right away, and then, I was like, well, we'll figure this out. So went from that to now I'm president of the company. So responsible kind of for all the, forward-looking strategy, and then how do we implement that on a day-to-day basis. We have a CEO, Andy Bassett, as well, and then a chief growth officer kind of makes up the executive team that are running the day-to-day operations of the company.
So how is Dad or any of the people that kind of started it? And Dad was doing it in the 90s.
Yep.
Any of those people still involved in the day-to-day, or?
He not necessarily the day-to-day.
Okay.
We're working on his transition plan of buying out his shares, and he's still actively involved in a lot of his clients and things, but we've transitioned to the day-to-day management of the company, I guess you could say, off of his plate to us. And then we really, most of the folks that were in leadership positions, we have a long-term employee that is now our accounting team lead, but she's one of those that's done about every role in the company. And so, but other than that, we've brought in a lot of new folks and have had to over time, and with a model change too, naturally there's just going to be some people that either don't see themselves in that model or don't fit that model, and that's okay. So we've had a lot of those too, but we're big believers in right people, right seats. So, talent is your most important asset always. And so spent a lot of time over the last few years trying to get people in the right seats, and their honest and best use of talent. If we can all do that, we're going to be able to achieve big things.
I follow you guys on social media, man. I feel like you guys do a really good job with just connecting with your audience on social media, and as far as like the culture side of things go. And I know you guys work on that. I'm curious on what is you guys' culture look like at the office, because I think it'd be good for everybody to hear about what you guys do.
Yeah, for sure. It's a big emphasis to your point of what we do. But what I always tell people is we get this question a lot in like interviews, and I always say, well, I can tell you what I intend our culture to be and what I want the feeling to be. But at the end of the day, the culture is whatever our team makes it, right? It's what you feel when you walk in the door every day to come to your job. Mm. And so, we certainly have our core values, and we have, what we try to drive. We try to drive that team and family environment, and, we want people to have their priorities right. So we always say, whatever your God, your faith, your family, and then work, And so we try to prioritize our people in them as people, and really drive that. We don't want you to feel a burden coming to work. Mm-hmm. Obviously work is not always fun, right? We don't all like everything that we do, but you should like working with your clients. You should like the people you come to work with. You should like the ultimate vision of where we're taking it. Mm-hmm. And so we spend a lot of time on that stuff. We always talk that we have certain things we want to work on, and you always want to get better. But I think putting an emphasis on really thinking about your team is not just employees, right? They're team members. They're people that you want to come and fight the fight with every day, and you don't want people that don't see that same goal and don't see that same vision on the team. So I think it's the biggest thing is getting the right people in that ultimately will drive that culture for you.
Yeah, what are some things you're doing right now, man, to grab those right people, right? Because There's not, I mean, I feel like the old school way of like just working hard mentality, like I feel like a lot of younger people maybe not have, from what we've seen, don't have the same mindset. Kind of like how I grew up, man. When I came to work, like I shut my door, I go to work.
Yeah.
Right now, there's so many distractions with social media and all this other stuff. Like, what are some things you guys are seeing when you're hiring or doing to get those right people in the right seats?
Yeah, that's $1 million question.
Yeah.
I don't know if anybody's got it 100% figured out, right? I think the biggest thing is, we've recently put a big emphasis on recruiting versus hiring. I just had this conversation on Getting Past the Premium with Brett Young. It was a fantastic conversation.
Yeah.
I'm using his words here. But you want to be always recruiting, right? And he called it farming versus fishing, I think, or something like that. Because you want to have that stable of people that you've already vetted that are good people that you think could fit, that when either they have a life change or whenever you have something open up, that you want to be able to call and you've already pre-vetted. As opposed to when somebody leaves or you now have an opening and you got to post on the job boards and you got to hire. That's a recipe for getting the wrong people because you need somebody, right? So I thought that was fantastic. We've been taking much more of an approach that way where we have an outbound strategy that we're using to get in front of people, and then that's one of Andy's roles as CEO, is to get out and tell our story. And that's how we look at it, is we're going to get in front of these people, tell our story, tell them who we are, and see if that resonates. Does it resonate with everybody? And then also see if they could be a potential fit. And if they are, we keep in a list of how we're going to track it. We nurture that over time, and then ideally when we have those positions open up, we've got people to go to.
Candidates.
Yeah.
That's smart. So you were a producer right out of college, and then obviously you worked your way all the way up to obviously president of the company, a very large company, I would say. What have you learned, man, like from the producer going to the and for people that are in those roles right now, they're like, hey, I just got my college degree. Like, what would be a couple of things, or just got done, I just got my license, I'm going to be maybe in an agency like what you guys are up to. Like, what would you tell yourself like 12 years later or 13 years later to, hey, man, I wish you would have done this or that?
Dude, that's a great question. I don't know if I've ever had anybody ask me that one. I mean, if I look back to when I started, I think what I would say is be very intentional with what you do. I think, especially in this grinding mentality that I feel like is out there just kind of constantly being pitched right now, it's easy to stay busy and not be productive. And just do things because that's what everybody else is doing. Or, I was told I need to make a bunch of calls today, so I just made a bunch of calls. Like, be very intentional with, who do you want to target? Who do you want to work with from a client perspective? Like, whether that's down to a niche focus or just general target market. How are you going to go after those people? What's your differentiating factor? Like, we didn't put any time into that thought, or I certainly didn't in the beginning. It was the old school, like, pick up the phone enough times or stop into enough doors and you're going to get opportunities, right? Which, again, is also a skill you need to have. You got to have that hardworking mentality. But I think being more intentional with our model, our value proposition from the start would have been really helpful. That's what we certainly did 9 or 10 years ago, is we really took that step back and said, look, if we're going to make the next step in our evolution, we've got to get a lot of this better built out. We kind of called it, like, we recognized we were building a bunch of books of business as individuals. We weren't building a business, right? And that's easy to do in our industry because it's like, Cyrus, you're coming on Monday, like, go build your book of business. Yep. Well, then your book looks different than my book, and then how do I hire people for your, like, you're doing things a little bit different. It just becomes a lot more difficult to scale. And so being really intentional and thoughtful about, where you're at today and where you want to get to. And you think about it in stages too. You don't have to think, where do I want to be in 15 years? Think about, where do I need to be in 2? And then the only thing I would add to that I've realized recently in the last few years is consider getting a mentor or coach. I cannot stress enough how impactful that's been because, look at somebody that is at that next level and go get around them, go get in their circle, even if you have to pay for some of that coaching. Being at the right events, that is invaluable. And I was just listening to a podcast today that said, I'd rather pay for somebody's 10,000 hours than go spend the 10,000 hours, right? And that's how long it takes to be an expert at something. And I'm a big believer in that because I can just attest to how much it's impacted me, and having good mentors and good people to take you to the next level is worth its weight in gold.
100%. So did you grow your book of business through cold calling? Because obviously you were pretty successful. What were some tips or tricks that you could have for some of the producers? Were you commercial or personal lines? Or
I mean, both technically,
both, okay.
Mostly commercial. Focus was commercial. Yeah.
So on the commercial side, what would be some tips or tricks that you used that helped you grow your book of business? Because you wouldn't be a president of a company, obviously, if you weren't successful in what you did.
Yeah, I mean, probably different in the way that I built it back then than I've learned today.
Okay.
But I mean, standard cold calling, stopping in, building relationships. I guess I maybe looked at the cold calling and things a bit different, where I wasn't necessarily expecting to call you day one and you'd be like, yeah, quote my insurance. Mm-hmm. I expected the third or fourth time we got on a call that maybe you'd be like, oh yeah, you have called. I'm like, oh yeah, you must be legit. And, so really like building that relationship through cold calling. But so that's how I had gotten a lot of the opportunities that I had. I mean, it was lists, it was stopping and door knocking and getting to meet people. I think today I would focus that a little bit differently and focus on, we like right now we have a very detailed COI process that we'll go through to build your COI relationships. Pretty unique process that we go through to make sure that you have the right COIs that get you the right business. But I look at it now more of building relationships with people and like who can get out and tell your story on your behalf so that you can get, even if it's not you directly, you can get in proximity to people that are your target clients. Start to hear your name, start to resonate, start to see that you can solve their problems. So again, that's how I had done it, 10 years ago. And I think it obviously led us to where we're at today. We still do plenty of the cold reach outs, don't get me wrong. You got to do that stuff to a degree. But it's a lot of now getting a lot more systematic with it, I think.
For sure. So I know you're doing some other stuff on the side. Do you want to share a little bit about what you're doing as well on the launch side? Or
yeah, I mean, absolutely. So
is it you? Is it other people involved? I'm curious on.
Yeah, so I'm mainly driving, building, launch, but then we have an internal group so it's a separate company, right? So that internal group owns that and does some of the different things. But basically what we ran into is, our model is unique enough that we couldn't find any tech essentially that could help us go implement that sales model that allowed us to ask the right questions and, differentiate in front of the client and do it at scale, effective, and
commercial side.
Commercial, yeah.
Perfect.
Yeah, definitely different than personal.
Yep.
Don't get me wrong. And we realized we just weren't doing our process that we knew worked enough because it was difficult to implement. Like, it makes sense. So we tried a bunch of different stuff over the years, and then finally in 2020, I think it was actually, just made the decision to build our own custom software. And so that's called Launch. We built it for us internally initially, and then through some groups that were in other firms kind of similar to us, we're like, hey, that could fit our model. And so we ended up taking their feedback, building it out further, and then taking it to market. So right now we have 15 or so companies that are actually using the product to help implement their sales process as well. It's become very customizable and robust. So initially it was built exactly how we wanted it. We've had to obviously make it so any firm can kind of take it and put it into their model. But really it allows you to ask the right questions at the right time consistently. It'll score the risk of that client. So you can, especially if you're like a personal lines agent looking to go to commercial, we give you all the questions to ask. We give you a score that you can use to tell the client, like, hey, you scored, 453 out of 1,000. Here's why you scored low. Like, here's the things you need to work on. And really, set yourself apart in the industry from those that are just slinging quotes all day long to these business owners. So that's what we're doing with that side. It's, like I said, a fully separate company that, we're taking to market, having fun with. And we're in a big rebuild of it now, which is going to be sweet. I'm pretty pumped, based on the feedback we've gotten over the last few years. And so that'll be pretty cool. But
that's awesome.
That's, among other things, that's the big one right now.
Yeah, that's cool, man. That's cool. That's funny because, we ran into the same issue on the personal line side. We said, quoting is a nightmare personal side. I mean, so we built it for ourselves, and other agents are like, whoa, like, that's cool, man. Can we use that too? Like,
yeah.
So now you're getting the feedback from the market and changing it. And and I feel like a lot of tech people are coming into the insurance industry, and I truly believe in agents, man. People that have done it in the past, or agency owners, like we understand what really goes inside of an agency, the nitty gritty of things. And man, I encourage people all the time who are agents to say, man, I encourage you to go do these tech things, because you don't want all these people coming in, building these tech products or whatever, to go do a sale probably in whatever 2 or 3 years and kind of walk away.
I totally agree, and I think what's interesting to me about where we're at right now is I feel like you can tell the tech that was built by non-insurance people,
right,
and you can tell the tech that was built by insurance folks doing the stuff every day. But I'll be interested to see the next 5 years where we're at, because I think it's going to be so much easier for any firm for very low cost to be able to build a custom product to exactly the way that they want. There's AI tools that'll code now. There's low code, no code, all that stuff. Like, it's going to be really cool to see where we get. I've seen some really cool stuff being built on top of HubSpot or Salesforce, which almost makes it a custom software, but you're building on their chassis. So it's a really cool spot to be in, because we're still somewhat hamstrung by the big agency management systems, but we're getting less reliant on them, and now we can actually start to innovate the way that we need to as agents out there doing the things every day.
100%. I think a lot of those big management systems, they are trying to, at least, or in the past they've never opened it up to connectivity, to make the connectivity a lot easier. I know Vertafore is working on it quite a bit. I'm not sure who you guys use.
We use Applied Epic.
You use Applied Epic.
They're saying that they are.
They're trying.
We're working on it. Yeah.
They're trying, but honestly, they should. They should, because otherwise, there's going to come some agent, man, that's going to figure some of these things out, and maybe it would be one agent, maybe 2 or 3, 4 agents connect together with 4 or 5 different techs they've built, and put it into one, and then kind of go and compete against the Vertafores and the Applieds,
Absolutely. I mean, you've seen it already with Iris. I don't know if you know Margot Giles, but they've built a heck of a platform that's very open source, very connection friendly, let's say, open API, and I mean, and I've just seen it. We don't use Iris, but I've been very impressed. And it's just I can't remember who I was talking to there, but I'm like, it's just refreshing that you guys are fighting the fight. Like, we need some competition in that space, and so I think you're going to see more of it, though, because it's easier than ever to build tools, and
100%.
I think it's awesome. So
I think so too.
It's good for the industry.
Margot's good stuff, man.
Yeah,
she's really cool. I think she's doing some really good stuff. There's a lot of new people coming in and doing a lot of cool stuff too, man. I feel like our industry is at a good place, man. I know we only have a couple minutes here, man. I'm curious on your thoughts. I know you're more on the commercial side. Curious on your thoughts on today's market, man. What do you see as opportunities? Do you see this as, hey, kind of hang tight? Like, what do you?
Yeah, I mean, we'll always go in cycles. So certainly, it's we'll eventually come out of the hard market and it'll stabilize, and we'll get back into a soft market. But that's where good firms that have longevity and that are growing, the market doesn't really matter. I mean, sure, you're going to see some shakeup and impact and whatnot, but if you're doing the right things, you have the right systems, the right processes, you have a value prop that is more than just the premium you sell. In the long term, you're going to be fine, and the market doesn't matter, right? Because you're not tied to the premium that you're selling to the client. And that's very important, because certainly 10 years ago, 15 years ago, that's the way we were. It was selling on cheap price or finding a coverage gap or good service or whatnot. And a lot of that stuff is just table stakes anymore. And now when you see these hard markets, it kind of separates that. And so that's where I go back to, think about your value prop, think about what you're doing for clients, be able to articulate it, and do that from the start. Don't try to do it now when you're going and delivering a 25% renewal and you're trying to sell the client on it. That's going to come across as defensive. But, I mean, keep it in mind, though. Keep it in perspective. This all goes in cycles. It will come to an end. It'll level out. It'll normalize. We just got to get to the other side, show value to your client, and you'll win every day.
100%. That's awesome. So, last question. This is what we ask everybody at the end of the podcast. So for me, a couple things I do on a daily basis. For me, I have to be structured throughout the day. Like I have to do certain things for me to put my head on the pillow and be like, okay, I won that day. Like for me, it's extremely important because every day is a blessing, right? And I think a lot of people take every day for granted, but I don't, because I have a checklist at the end of the night that I check on 4 things that I do. That, hey, if I did those 4 things, which family, God, whatever, blah blah blah, then I'm good, right? I won that day. Are there 1 or 2 things that you do on a daily basis that you're like, man, if I don't work out or if I don't do this, like my days are off, like I didn't win that day, but that's okay because tomorrow will be another day.
Yeah. So these are called the 5 daily non-negotiables. I'm totally stealing it, I implemented it from a coaching program I'm in. But I try to get as close to doing these every day as possible. And I have noticed there's kind of some mindset stuff behind it too, because you got to get really good at your time management, everything. But it's number 1, read 10 pages of a nonfiction book. Number 2, work out for 45 minutes. 3 is 3 social media or outbound, some sort of branding type of posts or whatnot. 4 is 5 cold outreaches per day, typically on social media or something like that, but it could be phone calls, could be whatever. So obviously if you're cold calling, you're probably blowing that out of the water. That's easy. But then 5 is review your goals at least 3 times a day. So you should have your goals, and that's probably one of the most impactful ones because it's easy to go through the process of setting up our goals, then we never look at them again.
Right.
And so putting it in front of yourself 3 times a day. So I just have reminders on my phone that literally pop up and say, hey, review goals. I have a note on my phone that then I go into and I look at.
Personal goals, business goals,
both.
Isn't that cool?
Yep.
Cool.
So I have like family goal, fitness goal, and then our different companies. We have certain goals that we're shooting for, and so those will all be in there. Do a quick review, takes 5 minutes, and just reminds you real quick, like, what are we doing this for every day? And so those would be the 5 things that from a task perspective every day that I'm shooting to get done, and it's amazing how much that shifts when you get into that routine, and you can tell when you get out of it, and you just get off.
That's for sure.
So,
so I'm gonna go one extra question here, real quick. So I know you've got a lot of moving pieces, man. Obviously, large organization, open up a new tech company, and obviously, I know kiddos, obviously, young ones. Because I know your wife. I've known her for a long time, man. She's a great gal. What is that like? Family dynamics like? Once like you're done with work, like you take work home. Like what are you doing to like? You know what I'm saying? Because it's really easy for us, man. Insurance, you could work all day, man. Work never ends.
100%.
Like what are some things you're doing, man, to kind of leave work at work, or are you doing that? Not doing that? What's going on there?
Yeah. Well, yes. I'm a big. Or I try my best. There's obviously some things that come home, but I try to, when I leave and I'm with my girls at home and we're family time, it's family time. I do my best to put the phone away and get off of any of that so that I can be focused on them. But a lot of it comes down to really open and honest communication between my wife and I. And this took us a long time, especially with young kids. Like when you're in that first phase, like it's just all gloves are off. You're figuring it out, But now, it's understanding when there are going to be times that, work's going to come home or I got to work extra or whatnot, and she can pick it up, but that can't be all the time, and really just having that open communication about where we're at. And now we've kind of gotten it to where, I know when she's stressed or whatnot, and she knows when I am, and we have those conversations. But good support systems, man, are key. Like good people around you. I mean, that's just, I can't stress that enough. And that not only goes to spouse and family, but people you build in your organization. It's so important. And so, I mean, it's putting a focus on keeping work at work, but also giving yourself grace sometimes, like understanding that that's not a reality. Like I get really hard on myself if I miss a workout. I'm like, gosh, damn it. Or I bring it home and then I know that I wasn't present with my girls. Like I'm hard on myself, and you got to give yourself some grace to understand. Like we're all humans, and this is a fluid environment we're operating in, and so it's never perfect. But you do your best, and you have the things that are important to you, and be dedicated to those, and just know that over the course of time you're going to do your best to hit those.
100%. Awesome. Elliot, I appreciate you, man. That was a lot of wisdom. Thanks for being on, and this won't be the last time, all right?
Yeah, let's do it, man. And I'm excited to have you on Getting Past the Premium.
Looking forward to it, man. That's going to be